year 95 AD, from an island in the Aegean Sea, a message emerged. A letter penned to paper by John, but delivered through a vision by Jesus Christ. A message meant to encourage and challenge 7 churches in Asia, to help them overcome apathy and moral compromise, and to help them choose faithfulness. 2,000 years later, the same message is true for us today. We are invited into the book of Revelation, not to decode a secret puzzle or wild imagery, but to get a glimpse of God's plan for a new creation.
Well, good morning, 11 a.m. Those watching online, good morning to you. If you're new, my name is Pastor Mark, lead pastor here at the Bridge, and just so glad to see you all this morning. Have we survived this crazy heat in October? What's up with that? It's insane. Hey, one of my biggest regrets, I almost maybe say biggest regret of my life, but that probably seems like an overstatement, would be I wish I would have gotten my eyes checked like my junior, senior year of high school. The reason why I say that is for like junior high, I was a really good hitter in baseball. Freshman year, a really good hitter. But then like my junior, senior year of high school, I became a bad hitter. And I couldn't really figure it out because I thought I was pretty good in middle school, freshman year of high school, played varsity all 4 years. But things just weren't happening. And I just, like, what happened? Like, I didn't change, but somehow I just wasn't producing. And then I'll never forget it, my freshman year of college. I'm sitting in my political science 100 class, listening to the lecture. I'm not even in the back of the room. I'm kind of like middle front of the room. Professor's using PowerPoint. And I realize in that moment, as I'm looking at the screen, that I can't really read the words. And again, I'm not sitting in the back. And it hits me, oh, I probably need to go to the optometrist and get my eyes checked. I think my vision's off. Sure enough, go, and I am nearsighted. And I will never forget the time that I put on glasses for the very first time. I wear contacts today. But if any of you have done this, you know what it's like. When you put them on and your vision has been off for a while, it's like you see 4K HD. Yeah, you guys know what I'm talking about, right? I mean, it's actually a pretty profound experience. And the crazy thing about that is that I put them on, and then I start seeing like, oh, wow, I can see people's like freckles and wrinkles on their face. I remember driving, this is before maps. I used to get up to like an intersection, and I'd have to like look at the street sign real closely in order to know where to turn. And now, from hundreds of feet away, I could easily read the street sign. And then, of course, for baseball, I could finally, from 60 feet away, a ball coming 90 miles per hour, I could see the red seams on the baseball rotating. Oh, that's a curveball, or this is a fastball. And I realized, oh my gosh, like, who knows what I could have done in high school if I would have gotten my vision checked when I was 17 or 18 years old. And the crazy thing is, I didn't even know in the moment that my vision was off until I got my eyes checked and then put on glasses and was like, oh, this is how things are supposed to look. Actually, I didn't have a clear vision of reality, and I wasn't even aware of it. This morning, as we turn to Revelation 4, the invitation is to put on a new set of glasses, spiritual glasses, if you will, to actually see what reality is. Because we may not even know it, but I think our vision is a little distorted. So Revelation, that word, if you were here about a month ago when we started, is the very first Greek word in this book. Originally one giant long scroll, didn't have chapter breaks and verses breaks, but this word is apocalypse in Greek. And what revelation means, it literally means to disclose something, to kind of pull back the curtain, to lift up the cover, and to see what ultimate reality really looks like, even if at the time it doesn't seem like it. That is actually the point of Revelation. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to open up to Revelation chapter 4. If you need a Bible, we got the free orange ones underneath your chair. Page 839. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm actually going to read this whole chapter. It's not a long chapter. And as I go through it, kind of almost verse by verse, I'm just going to point out some words and phrases. Because as you're going to see, Revelation 4 is completely saturated in Old Testament allusions. But if you're anything like me, we're not as well read in kind of the Old Testament. So don't feel bad. I'm just going to point them out for you, and then we're going to move on through. So here we start, Revelation 4. After this, I looked, and this is John speaking, and there before me was a door standing open in heaven. Now, to be clear, stop right there. What John isn't doing, it's not like John has a telescope out and he's looking up at heaven, and if you look way up there, you can see the door into heaven. That is not what's going on here. Some people think that heaven is just way up there in the sky. No, that's not true. Biblically speaking, a definition of heaven would simply just be God's reality or God's dimension, where the presence of God is fully available. And actually, in December, when we get to the end of Revelation, you'll see that for Jesus, the point is that heaven comes to earth. Heaven and earth actually belong together. They should interlock like this. And right now, until Jesus comes back, there are moments where we can see that door open and we're able to encounter God's presence, His dimension, His reality. Heaven's a lot closer than you think. It's right here. We just can't see it. You have to put on, so to speak, spiritual glasses, if you will. So, back to the text. He sees this door open, standing in heaven. And then he says, and the voice I had first heard speaking to me like a trumpet said, and this is the same Jesus from chapter 1, same kind of start. The resurrected Jesus says, come up here, and I will show you what must take place after this. And real quick, John, this vision that we're going to get, and it's Revelation 4 and 5, they go together. Next Sunday, we're going to look at Revelation 5. This is kind of a second vision that he's receiving after the first vision that Jesus gave to him about the 7 churches. And that was chapters 2 and chapters 3. And so when he says after this, he's not talking about, oh, here's something that's going to happen in like the far off distant future. No, this is actually a present reality vision. This is going on right now. It's the present. It's not some long off future thing, but it's kind of the second vision after the first one that he gave about the 7 churches. And he says this, at once I was in the Spirit, and there before me was a throne in heaven with someone sitting on it. And the one who sat there had the appearance of jasper and ruby. Those are precious stones. And a rainbow that shone like an emerald encircled the throne. These are all Old Testament descriptions. This one in particular from Ezekiel chapter 1. Don't worry about turning there. Also, this emerald rainbow, what's going on there? That comes from Genesis 9, where God makes a covenant with a guy named Noah after the flood that he will stay faithful to this earth. And so already there's allusions to Ezekiel 1 and Genesis 9. We continue on. Surrounding the throne were 24 other thrones, and seated on them were 24 elders. Okay, so if God's throne is like a circle, now he's envisioning a second circle around that circle. So a circle within a circle. And on that outer circle, there's 24 elders sitting on 24 thrones surrounding the throne of God. Why 24? Now again, as we've been saying this whole time, Revelation is full of symbolism. There's a deeper reality that these numbers are pointing to. And in this case, we think this one, we're about, maybe 90% sure, that the 24 means this: the 12 tribes of Israel, and then the 12 apostles in the New Testament. 12 and 12, 24. A couple other theories, but I think that's probably the leading majority one is that, meaning this represents all of God's people encircled around the throne of God. Here's how they're dressed. They're dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. And from the throne came flashes of lightning, rumblings, and peals of thunder. This is another Old Testament allusion taken out of Exodus 19. What happens there? Moses is going up on the top of Mount Sinai to literally meet with and encounter the presence of Yahweh. And it says there's thunder and lightning. These are meanings of God's majesty, his power, when you're in his presence. In front of the throne, 7 lamps were blazing. These are the 7 spirits of God. Again, another Old Testament allusion, this time to Zechariah chapter 4, where there's 7 lamps burning in front of the throne of God. And that means the full, complete availability of the presence of God. 5 stood for God's presence, and 7 means perfection, completion, what we would call the Holy Spirit. Also, in front of the throne, there was what looked like a sea of glass, clear as crystal. What does this mean? This, again, going back to Ezekiel 1. Also, in the Old Testament, the sea, most often a Jewish person would think of the Red Sea, which is what the Israelites crossed through as they gained freedom from the oppressive Pharaoh in Egypt. And then also in the ancient world, the sea stood for chaos, for evil. No one understood the ocean at that time. And so what's going on here is that before the throne of God, you'll notice that the sea is clear and calm, meaning that God has calmed and quieted all evil and chaos. It is clear as crystal before him. And in the center, around the throne, were 4 living creatures, and they were covered with eyes in front and in back. And I just think he's basically describing all moms right here, because we all know that moms have eyes in the back of their heads. The first living creature was like a lion. The second was like an ox. The third had a face like a man. And the fourth was like a flying eagle. All right. Why a lion? Why an ox? Why an eagle? Why a human? Here's why. An ox was the mightiest of domestic animals. An eagle was the mightiest of birds. A lion was the mightiest of wild animals. And then, of course, you have human, who's kind of the mightiest creature of all. The point here is that all of creation, bird, beast, pet, and man, are constantly worshiping Yahweh. Each of the 4 living creatures had 6 wings and was covered with eyes all around, apparently even under their wings. This is modeled after the seraphim angels in Isaiah 6 in the Old Testament. Day and night, they never stop saying, "Holy, holy, holy is the Lord God Almighty, who was and is to come." And whenever the living creatures give glory and honor and thanks to him who sits on the throne and who lives forever and ever, then the 24 elders, they fall down before him who sits on the throne and worship him who lives forever and ever. And then they lay their crowns before the throne and they say, "You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory and honor and power." Why? For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. I use this metaphor if you've been listening to our new After Hours podcast. This is something that came up in the gym about a month ago, and it's this. I think one of the reasons why Revelation is so hard for us to understand with all of its symbolic, kind of exaggerated language, I think it's so hard to interpret because John is bilingual. John is bilingual. Now, we live in Southern California. Lots of people are bilingual here. We have lots of people here at the Bridge who are bilingual. There are those of you, like some of you right now sitting down that I've texted with or talked with in person, and while I'm talking to you, you move back and forth between English and Spanish. It's amazing. What a gift. That's why I love Southern California. And the thing about being bilingual is that you're fluent in two languages. And you go back and forth. You don't even have to think about it. You're just doing it subconsciously if you're fully bilingual. Now, the problem with someone being bilingual is if you're not bilingual like me, it's then hard to understand, especially when they're going back and forth between two languages. I think we have a hard time reading and understanding Revelation because John, who's received this vision from and about Jesus, he's bilingual, and he's speaking and writing in two languages very fluently. He's just going back and forth, and we're not fluent in these languages. And so it's hard to understand for us. Okay, well, what are the two languages, Mark? How is he bilingual, to use that metaphor? The first one is, John is so fluent and steeped in the Old Testament. And by and large, American Christians, we don't read too much of our Old Testament, unfortunately. And so what John is doing in Revelation 4, and he's going to do it again next Sunday as we see in Revelation 5, is every word and every phrase is just soaked in Old Testament throne room scenes. Ezekiel 1, Exodus 19, Isaiah 6, Zechariah 4, Daniel 7, the list goes on. Now, don't worry about all of that, but know that his point in doing this is that John is he's a good Jewish Christian pastor. And he's sitting literally on these wet rocks in prison on an island in the Aegean Sea where there's been nothing but oppression and persecution to these 7 churches in Asia Minor. And he gets this vision, and it's like he's saying, Look on the throne. Yahweh, the God of the Old Testament, he's on the throne right now. The throne's not empty. It's not up for grabs. There's someone ruling in the headquarters of the universe. God is on the throne. And that was comforting. That was good news for Jewish Christians to be reminded of that. Because times are tough. And so he's put on your glasses, let me show you ultimate reality because I know it doesn't look that way right now. It doesn't seem like God is on the throne running the universe. It doesn't seem like the throne is occupied. But you can trust. You can trust Yahweh. And you can have assured hope that he's got something in store. The Old Testament is John's first language. We're not even familiar with that one. The second one we're even less familiar with. And this is where Revelation and John's visions are so brilliant. And it took me years of research to kind of have my eyes open to this. This is absolutely brilliant. It's not just that God is on the throne and worship 24/7, although that is enough in of itself. It's a majestic vision. John is also speaking into a second language that his readers were fluent in. And it's something that we've already talked about. The second language that he is drawing upon is the Roman imperial cult. The Roman imperial cult. Now, in that time, we think Revelation was written around 95 AD. The Roman emperor was Domitian. And I'm going to talk about the Roman emperor Domitian probably for the next 10 minutes, so hang with me. But know that here's the point of what John is doing in this vision. He is going to show that Domitian is a fraud, that he's a fake. That it looks like, oh yeah, the Roman emperor is on the throne. Like, that's who's in charge. And he's going to say, no, absolutely not. Yahweh's in charge. It's almost like he's slapping in the face the Roman Empire. He's making a parody of him, a fraud, a fake. And this was good news for these house churches. It offered them assurance because they're small, they're a minority, they're oppressed. The house church is 20 people, 25 people maybe. And everywhere they went, the Roman emperor was being worshiped, and they were told to worship him. And now they're being passed this scroll that says, no, right now, Jesus Christ is on the throne. Worship him. And not only was it comforting, but it actually would have been very politically revolutionary. So, what does this look like? All right, here we go. You guys ready? The word worthy isn't just a religious word. The word worthy was also a political word in the first century. Let me give you some examples. And we know this from artifacts in history that scholars have found. Worthy is what Roman citizens shouted when the emperor rode into the city. Worthy, worthy. Worthy was shouted when Roman senators, when the emperor walked down the hall. They would say, worthy, worthy. There were hymns and songs that were created and sang at events to the Roman emperor. Guess what some of the words and phrases were in these hymns and songs that were directed to the emperor? I'll literally give you some of the words. We'll put them up on the screen. Holy One, glory, salvation belongs to you, authority, worthy to receive power, righteous are your judgments. And no joke, Domitian had people call him our Lord and God. Doesn't get any more explicit than that. These are the words in the hymns and songs that were sang to the emperor at the time Revelation was written. We're just getting started. During his reign as the Roman emperor, Domitian, check this out. Up in that time, so Julius Caesar and other emperors before him, they had 12 bodyguards that surrounded them everywhere they went, kind of like the Secret Service today. Guess what Domitian did during his reign? He upped it from 12 bodyguards to 24. 24 bodyguards constantly around him. So, for example, Domitian would be at the Olympic Games, and he would have 24 elders surrounding him. And guess what they wore? White with golden crowns. And guess what they did? They would take their golden crowns and they would prostrate themselves in front of his throne and put those crowns down to represent recognizing his sovereignty. With that in mind, let's go read Revelation 4:4. We're going to put this on the screen. This is an audible. Revelation 4:4. Surrounding the throne were 24 elders, and they were dressed in white and had crowns of gold on their heads. Now let's read verses 10 through 11. The 24 elders fall down before him. This is talking about Yahweh, who sits on the throne, and they worship him who lives forever and ever. And they lay their crowns before the throne, and they say, "You are worthy, our Lord and God," forget you, Domitian, "to receive glory and honor and power." So much of Revelation 4 was said and done to Domitian as the Roman Empire while Revelation is being written. Let me go even deeper if this sounds crazy to you. The 7 towns in Asia Minor, the last 2 weeks that we looked at, did you know that they had male choirs formed who sang praises and held banquets to honor the emperor? The birthday of the reigning emperor was celebrated monthly, not even yearly. Have your birthday every month. How narcissistic is that? It was said of Rome that the state and the emperor brought good news and peace to the world. That the emperor was the savior of the world. Remember that thing, like the Christmas story in Luke, where it's announced from the angels, behold, there's a child born who will bring euangelion, which is Greek for good news, and is the savior of the world? That was a slap in the face to Caesar, because that's exactly what Caesar was saying. One more for you. Do you know their currency, the coins in the first century, had the face of the emperor on it, signifying worship to him? And I'm not even touching on what I briefly touched on 2 Sundays ago of temples that were built, altars that were built, incense that was given, literally worship to the emperor. It is in that cultural context that John receives in Revelation 4 a heavenly scene of the throne room of God, and it's God on it, not Domitian. That was absolutely subversive and radical. Because what it meant is that Rome ain't the center of the universe, God is. Why? Revelation 4. You are worthy, our Lord and God, to receive glory, honor, and power. Why? And this, Rome can never claim this. For you created all things, and by your will they were created and have their being. Did you know that the word throne in Greek in Revelation is used 47 times? 47. So American culture has turned the book of Revelation into this speculative code to decipher in the future. When the theme of the book, and this is undebated in scholarship, the theme of the book is worshiping Jesus because he's on the throne and Caesar isn't. Most people would say that Revelation 4 and 5 is the heart theologically of this book. So it's all about worship. I mean, it's revealing who actually sits on the throne. But you gotta put your glasses on, pull the curtain back, and see reality for what it is, because if you're living in the first century at this time, it didn't seem like God was on the throne. But John's saying, oh, yeah, he's on the throne. Domitian ain't got nothing. So, what does this mean? I think the question for us is this: who's on the throne of your heart? Who is on the throne of your heart? Put otherwise, who or what is your life centered around? What are you centered around? Who's in the control tower of your universe? Now, I just said the phrase your universe. That's not true. It's not our universe. But if we're honest as Americans, I think we often think that life revolves around us. That's very American. We're the center of attention. Revelation 4 is very clear who the center of the universe is, and it's Jesus Christ. And so we all have the right, and most of us have a good enough theology here to know that God is on the throne. Like, I think most of us would agree with that. The question, though, is in your everyday life, like your Monday morning, your Tuesday night, whatever it is, metaphorically, if you look at the door of heaven opened, who's on your throne? There's this great quote from David Foster Wallace, who, by the way, I don't think is a Christian. He gave this at a commencement speech, 2005, Kenyon College. It's a famous quote. He said this: "There is no such thing as not worshiping. Everybody worships. The only choice we get is what to worship. And the compelling reason for maybe choosing some sort of God or spiritual thing to worship," again, remember, he's not a Christian, "be it JC or Allah, be it Yahweh or the Wiccan mother goddess or the Four Noble Truths or some inviolable set of ethical principles, is that pretty much anything else you worship will eat you alive. If you worship money and things, if they are where you tap real meaning in life, then you'll never have enough, never feel you have enough. It's the truth. Worship your body and beauty and sexual allure, and you will always feel ugly. And when time and age start showing, you will die a million deaths before they finally grieve you. To worship is to be human. Everyone worships, Christian or not. In that sense, worship isn't just a Christian thing. However, the unique claim to Christianity is that worship is due to God alone as creator of the universe because he's created everything. And because he's creator, he's holy. Holy means to be set apart, to be other, to be unique and special in its own category. And it's for that reason that Christians say that only God can be worshiped. Only he's worthy. He gets all the honor, all the glory, all the praise because he's creator and everything else is creation. So the worship of money leaves you wanting more. The worship of sex and beauty leaves you lonely. The worship of yourself actually leaves you isolated, and the worship of power leaves you constantly insecure. All worship of anything other than God will leave you empty and fail you. Why? And this is key. Because they don't correspond to ultimate reality. Because ultimately, in reality, none of those things are at the center of the universe. And so none of them can fulfill, can make good on and hold your worship. Because they're not the ones holding the world together. They're not the center of the universe. Eugene Peterson, in his book, Reverse Thunder, writes this. In worship, God gathers his people to himself as center. Worship is a meeting at the center, so that our lives are centered in God and not lived eccentrically. We worship so that we live in response to and from this center, the living God. And I think this is so insightful. Failure to worship consigns us to a life of spasms and jerks at the mercy of every advertisement, every seduction, every siren. Without worship, we live manipulated and manipulating lives. We move in either frightened panic or deluded lethargy, as we are in turn alarmed by specters and soothed by placebos. If there is no center, there is no circumference. And listen to this. People who do not worship are swept into a vast restlessness, epidemic in the world, with no steady direction and no sustaining purpose. People who do not worship are swept into a vast restlessness, epidemic in the world, with no steady direction and no sustaining purpose. All of that to say, worship is our anchor in a world of chaos. See, when we worship God, do you know that it actually brings you freedom? I think so many modern day people, we think we are the center of the universe. We think we should be the center of the universe. And for someone to tell you that you're not the center of the universe, we actually find that offensive. That's where we've swung the pendulum so far. But the reason why there's freedom in worship, because so many of us, we have this weight and this burden on our shoulders where we're trying to be the best, look the best, achieve the most, and we just feel all this pressure and this burden on us. And when you worship God, actually, that burden and that pressure that you feel to be and to do all these things is released, and that is funneled in worship to the only one who can actually hold that and deserves it. And so worship frees you. There's freedom in worship. Our American Christian problem is that our picture and our mental understanding of God is too low. We don't have a Revelation 4 picture of God. And we need a Revelation 4 picture of God. We treat God like a cosmic vending machine or some giant genie who just is there to grant every wish that we have that we can call on 24/7. And when we do that, we make ourselves the center of the universe. It's like when people, back in the Middle Ages thought that the sun revolved around the earth, and then they learned that they had it wrong. The earth revolves around the sun. We revolve around God. He is the center. And here's the good news. When you center your life around God, when you worship Him, your vision of life turns into 4K HD. And you begin to see how beautiful and amazing and majestic He is. And actually things begin to fall in place because you're beginning to see reality as it really is. Do you know that worshiping God will give you the most amount of joy no matter what rocky situation you're in? In fact, I would say it's not until you worship God that your joy will be made complete. There's this really good analogy that C.S. Lewis gives, and we'll put his quote up here on the screen in about a minute or two. But it's like, think about two people who are in love. Can you imagine being in love with someone and then not being able to express to them that you love them? Your joy would never hit kind of its height. The point is, like, when you praise someone or something, your joy then is made complete. It's in telling someone that you love them that you encounter the most joy. If you're not able to tell them you love them, you never reach that kind of mountain of joy. Here's how Lewis puts it. Here's the quote. It's a famous quote. Hang with me here on this. He says, I think we delight to praise what we enjoy because the praise not merely expresses but completes the enjoyment. It is its appointed consummation. And then he gives some examples. It is not out of compliment that lovers keep on telling one another how beautiful they are. The delight is incomplete until it's expressed. It is frustrating to have discovered a new author and not to be able to tell anyone how good he is. To come suddenly at the turn of the road upon some mountain valley of unexpected grandeur and then to have to keep silent because the people with you care for it no more than a tin can in the ditch. To hear a good joke and then find no one to share it with. In commanding us to glorify Him, God is inviting us to enjoy Him. In commanding us to worship Him, God is actually after your joy and after your freedom. He's saying, center your life around me and you will actually experience life in 4K HD with as much joy that you could ever want. Because that's ultimate reality, not what you think you see around you. I want us to do this. The great thing about this morning is the practical application is to do what we're just going to do now, and that's to worship. And of course, to be clear, worship is more than singing. What you do Tuesday morning at Starbucks in a business meeting is a part of worship. But this is also a part of it. And here's what I want you to do. What John is doing in Revelation from like a literary level is he's kind of like a poet. He wants to get into your imagination. That's why he uses all these fancy words. So I want you just to close your eyes right now, be relaxed, nothing weird is gonna happen. Don't worry about what you're eating for lunch. Don't worry about the Cowboys game. I think we can all agree that Jesus is more important than the Cowboys. Thank you. Thank you, Lord. All right, seriously. I want you to get a mental picture in your mind. Think of the human Jesus sitting on a throne. God on a throne. Get that picture in your mind. Rainbow, precious stones. Crazy creatures circling him, just worthy, worthy, worthy. And know that this is something that's been going on for infinity. people of all times, all places. We're just getting in on it. We're just joining the course that's been going on for eternity. Who is on the throne room of your heart? And as you worship him, that's actually what will make you fully alive. You're going to experience freedom and joy as you sing to him. And some of us this morning, honestly, there's a physical posture to this of maybe you need to get on your knees. Stand, raise your hands, whatever the thing is. I mean, can I just say that it actually should be more weird if we don't get on our knees than it is if we do? Because that's what's going on right now in heaven. That's what's going on. Prostrating before the Lamb on the throne. Worthy, worthy. You are a Lord and God. We have to get on our knees, Lord. Man. Worship's the secret to joy, to freedom.